I brought some books that I would love to give away. It's on the integration of faith and work, especially pertaining to therapy, mental and physical health. I also have arthritis, so it's hard for me to carry them back to my car. So I would love for you guys to take one. Um, I'm not going to share solutions. I'm just going to share about my hardest moments in pastoral ministry. And I've always hoped that I could talk to a room of therapists and that they could help me. And so this is part of my dream. It's just a trauma dump on you and you heal me. And then if there's other pastors, we could trauma bond, which is the strongest form of bonding. I remember being in Rome, my first vacation with my wife and little child. We were walking down cobble streets, and these huge men and women were staring down at us, thousands of years old. And I remember just having tears run down my face. I thought maybe it was the allergens that I wasn't used to. But more and more, I realized that I was grieving something that I didn't have the name to. And every day I would just cry as we were on vacation, as I finally had some space from ministry. And then I asked my wife, could I just take 4 or 5 hours at a coffee shop and journal and think about what is so heavy on my heart? I filled up a few pages of my journal. And then in the last 2 pages that were fully blank, I just started putting down names. I wrote 50 names of people I cared about, of people I loved in ministries, family, friends. And these 50 people had transitioned out of my life. You know, some of it was great. Some of it was just the cost of church planting. And some of it was bitter and angry. I felt like a little sticker that you peel on and off enough times, and I didn't stick anymore. I don't know how you attach and detach 25 times a year. And I think that's what a lot of pastors go through. Or you just harden your heart and become distant, or you're professional in your workplace, but you don't really care. So if you have answers for me, I'm all ears. We have no clinical reflection time. Please come talk to me. You know, I think some of the times where that our church was most unstable, I got some brutal goodbyes. You know, like people just ghosting. And I've invested in them. I did their marriage. I was at the hospital. And then all of a sudden, I just don't see them anymore. And there are other people that I wish would have ghosted me. I was walking up the stage, and I asked for the mic from one of the worship team members. And as she handed me the mic, she whispered in my ear, "I'm not coming to your church anymore." And then I said, "Good morning and welcome to a new church," with tears down my face. This other guy yelled at me because I never asked him out for coffee, even though he never told me that he wanted to be asked out for coffee. And I can't read minds, so that was hard. And there was especially one season where I went through 13 conflict resolutions in 30 days. 2 of them back to back for 3 hours each in the same coffee shop. I've never gone there again. And I know for you therapists, that's just another Wednesday, right? People complaining to you for 6 straight hours. But for me, it was novel. And I realized that as I'm trying to extend grace to the person in front of me while wearing my pastor hat and my poor counselor hat, and then being the one that they're upset with, that I could extend grace to them, but I would be taking the nails. And then when I go home, I'm crucifying my family. I picked up this huge, cute elephant, and my kids did nothing wrong. But I picked it up and I just slammed it against the ground, and it shattered. And from 2 walls down, my wife tells me, "Get out of our house. And you make a decision whether you want to be a pastor or you want to be a father." I went out to my cousin's place and I stayed there for 3 days, just sitting with the Lord and asking, um, what do I do? What do I do with these open wounds? What do I do with these scars? What do I do with being an unsticky sticker? What do I do with that? Like when I was at Rome, they were showing us these huge digs, and they told me that they never cleared out the rubble, and Rome just built on top of the rubble, and they called it a tiramisu city. And I realized that I had a lot of relational rubble in my heart, and I just would build on top of it. Because when someone leaves the church, all I can do is welcome the next family in. I didn't spend time grieving, and I still don't exactly know how to be a pastor that continues to attach with people over and over again. So I would love to talk to you and give you a book.
I was asked to share just a little bit about my own personal journey with well-being and mental health. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I serve as the lead pastor of a church in downtown LA called Citizens LA. I've been married. Thank you. I've been married to my wife Carol for 12 years. I have two kids. A daughter Avery, who's almost 9 years old. I can't believe that. And then my son Jack, who's 6. And I'd say my personal journey with mental health started almost 10 years ago. In late 2015, we had just had our first daughter, Avery, and 2 months after she was born, my wife was diagnosed with postpartum depression. And then 2 months after that, her mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and was given about a year to live. And it was an interesting time for our family because we had never had to navigate the convergence of so many kind of heavy things in life, becoming first-time parents, dealing with grief and potentially losing a parent. And so at the end of 2015, we made the very difficult decision that my wife would take our then 5-month-old daughter and move to Philadelphia to take care of my mother-in-law while I stayed back here. And it was a tough decision, to be away from your family, especially to be away from, your first daughter. I had to watch my daughter crawl and walk for the first time on FaceTime and things like that. And obviously, it was much harder for my wife, who really was had to be a single mom and had to take care of her ailing mom as well. And at the time, I was serving in full-time ministry as a worship director at a church that also, in that season, was going through a lot of kind of internal turmoil. There was a lot of staff turnover at the time, and I was kind of playing that mediator role for our staff and our senior leadership. And so basically that 2 to 3 year span for me personally was I was navigating emotions that I had never navigated before. I felt burnt out, exhausted, depressed. Um, I didn't have the language or the tools to even process what I was feeling. The only thing was that I vowed basically that I was not ever going to go into ministry after this. And sometime during that time, we had our second kid for some reason. I have no idea why we did that. And so all of this kind of came to a halt where I just felt like I couldn't kind of move forward. And so at the end of 2018, stepped down from my position. And that's when I actually came back to Fuller to finish seminary full time. I found a therapist for the first time. I found a coach. I just basically started looking for as many resources as I could find. And one of the gifts of coming to Fuller was discovering just that there was such a wealth of um, knowledge, such a wealth of resources and people, mentors who could help me navigate some of these things theologically. And yeah, I mean, don't want to put him on the spot, but I took a class with Kevin Doy, who's standing over there, and it was one of the most impactful um, experiences for me because it was a class on Asian American leadership, and he said something in that class that has shaped the way that I've led citizens, and I probably say this once every month at some point from the pulpit that he said that discipleship is not making a person more Christian, it's making a person more human. And the idea being that Jesus wasn't the most Christian person who ever walked the earth. He was the most fully human person who ever walked the earth, mental, social, spiritual, in all facets of life. And that kind of, even when we sat down to come up with our core values as a church, one of our core values was holistic faith. And it was the idea that, we see faith as so much more than just doctrine alone, but that it was actually about integrating all aspects of our lives into our relationship with Christ. And so from the beginning, without all of that and without the investment of people in my life, I'm pretty positive I would not be leading this community now. Even when I came in to this role, it was 4 months before the pandemic. I had no idea what I was doing. Had a lot of insecurity. For 6 years, I was the music guy, and all of a sudden, they told me to be the lead guy, and I did not know how to I barely knew. I preached maybe 10 times in my entire life before then. Now I was being called upon to preach to a congregation every week during the pandemic, during everything that was happening in 2020. But one of the first sermon series that we did as a church was a series around emotionally healthy spirituality, and it was something that was I needed for myself, and I could tell our congregation needed as well. We did our first big community group curriculum around emotionally healthy church. We teach classes called emotionally healthy relationships. That's always the most attended course that we offer at our church. And I know that there are so many people in the same boat as I am, and it took a lot of work and a lot of processing for me to kind of start to uncover and untangle so many of the scripts that I think were kind of barriers in my faith. I'm a second generation Korean American. My parents immigrated here in the early 80s. I was the elder son of two sons, and I was the elder son in the prodigal son story in every way. My brother's an actor, and I'm a pastor, so that tells you kind of that is exactly what it is. And I realized that kind of the four scripts that I grew up internalizing was one, you exist to make everyone around you happy. It was two, you have to be exceptional. Three, you're not allowed to depend on anyone. And four, it was you are valued more for what you do than who you are. And I wouldn't say that it's necessarily my parents who did this. I think it was a combination of they were immigrants. They relied on me a lot to take care of things in the house because they were doing dry cleaners. They were kind of extremely busy. They taught me from a young age to be self-sufficient, and they often kind of ingrained that message of we're sacrificing everything so that you can be excellent and self-sufficient. And so all of these things made it very difficult to explore the idea of mental well-being, even to explore my own vulnerability and weakness. But thankfully, because of my education here, because of again the investment of so many mentors and different people in my life, I think I'm coming to a place where I'm so much more comfortable leading out of my vulnerability and inadequacy and weakness. And so all that to say, I'm still growing, but I'm just really honored to be a part of something like this. So just want to thank everyone for having me.